It's Wednesday Addams. I see you're trying to distract yourself from your own banal thoughts. Let me help. Here's a recording thing made of my latest root canal.
Wednesday, Season 2, begins August 6th, only on Netflix.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
In March of 2000, Leah Roberts left a note for her roommate stating that she was looking to take a short trip. She leaves her roommate money to cover the expenses for the upcoming month, and in the note assures her roommate that she would return. Several days pass without any updates from Leah. Her abandoned car was discovered on the highway by two joggers. You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of Leah Roberts.
Leah Roberts disappeared 15 years ago this month. Her crashed Jeep was found in Washington State, but there was no sign of the former NC State student. WRAL's Gerald Owens has the puzzling details in tonight's NC Wanted Mystery.
Ultimately, we just want to know what happened to her.
Carol Roberts longs to see her sister again. Former NC State student Leah Roberts left the Triangle in March of 2000 after the death of her parents, without a word to anyone.
It's unlike Leah to not have called to let us know that she's okay for this amount of time, especially knowing that her car would have been found by now.
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, humidly moist basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you could tell from our Instagram and Facebook post, Coach and I are eyeballs deep back in the old back-to-school routine. Our schedules are not G-high, and so not wanting to take more than a week to get our stuff situated, you get the sultry sounds of the one and only Arlo. No new patrons to speak of, but we did get some good feedback on the old what if about Alcatraz. We got some good recommendations for some upcoming what if episodes. So if you're not a patron and those types of topics interest you, head on over to patreon.com/mysteriousbrews and hit us up. You get everything for the minimum tier of $3 a month. And of course, Patreon is allowing you to, I believe, only pay for 10 months and get 12 months. So check them out. Check them out. So not a whole lot of housekeeping to do. So we're going to jump right in. Tonight we are talking about Leah Roberts. And she was born on July 23rd, 1976, and her government name is Leah Toby Roberts. She was born near Durham, North Carolina, and was the youngest of three children with a sister named Kara and an older brother named Heath. Now, Leah was described by many as an insightful and poetic girl, with many saying that she had an old soul. A friend of Leah's, Susie Smith, described her as, quote, just a very awesome person. Everybody that meets her likes her. Very personable. Great smile, but you know she was also kind of private, end quote. Leah was close with her family, especially her sister Kara, who was only 2 years older. Now, tragedy would strike the family when Leah was only 17 years old. Her father was diagnosed with a chronic lung illness. The family, however, rallied around their patriarch and devoted a lot of time and attention to him. The diagnosis affected Leah greatly, but on the outside, she maintained her positive and friendly attitude. Leah was a vegetarian and also smoked cigarettes, which in everything you read, they want to make sure that you are aware of that, like that has anything to do with anything, but it is what it is. Leah's accent was said to be a strong Southern one, but she could speak fluent Spanish, and as an adult, Leah stood 5 foot 6 inches tall and weighed approximately 130 pounds. She was fair complected with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. She was graced with a small beauty mark above her right upper lip. So in the upper right corner of her lip, she had this little beauty mark. And when she smiled, she had noticeable dimples. Now, she was also known to wear gold earrings with quarter-carat ruby stones. She wore 3 rings on her right hand, including a 14-carat white gold ring set with a .45 emerald-cut diamonds flanked by 2 3/4-carat baguette diamonds. Now, Leah began attending North Carolina State University at Raleigh in 1995. She was majoring in both anthropology and Spanish. She even spent a summer abroad studying in Spain. She was an extremely bright young lady. Despite her success in school, those who were closest to her have stated she never liked the idea of fitting into a box and doing things simply because they were expected of her. She believed there was more to life than playing by the rules. Tragedy would once again strike Leah and change her life forever. When she was 20 years old and a sophomore at NC State, her mother died unexpectedly from heart disease. Now, this shook the entire family, and they all knew of their father's medical condition, but never knew anything or noticed anything wrong with their mom. Leah took the death extremely hard and was given her mother's engagement ring, which she wore everywhere she went. And that was, I think that's the one that has the emerald cut diamonds on it. Now, according to friends and family, Leah would never remove the ring no matter what was going on, where she was working, what she was doing. She treasured it and considered it a permanent connection to her mother. As a result of her mother's death, a feeling kind of washed over her that she needed to be there for her father and her siblings. So she decides to take time off from school and return to NC State in the fall of 1998. And unfortunately, tragedy would strike again, and this involved a horrendous car accident that Leah was involved in. According to the accident report, a truck turned in front of Leah and she was unable to stop in time. She suffered a punctured lung and shattered her right femur. Surgeons had to place a metal rod in her femur to assist in the healing process. Now, according to her sister Kara, Leah had confided in her that when she saw that the wreck was unavoidable, she was certain that she was going to die. When she survived, she felt as if she had been born again. It was at this point Leah began looking at life differently, feeling that there was so much more to it than she could have ever thought, and it seems such a shame to waste a moment of it when it could all end so suddenly and unexpectedly. Concerning the accident, her brother Heath would say, quote, "I think that all the things had a cumulative effect of making Leah even more introspective and probably more aware that although she didn't know what she wanted to do, I think she was unhappy that she wasn't achieving it," end quote. Leah signed up for a field study in Costa Rica, which was scheduled for the spring of 1999. Tragedy would come knocking again. This time, her father would succumb to his medical issues and would pass away just 3 weeks before Leah was supposed to leave for Costa Rica. She struggled with whether she needed to cancel her trip or if she should go to kind of get away from all the heartache. Leah would ultimately choose to go, and Kara was given power of attorney over Leah's bank accounts just in case something happened while she was gone. Leah had saved up some money and had received some inheritance after her father passed away. Her friend and roommate, Nicole, who also went on the trip, was worried about Leah. According to Nicole, Leah wasn't showing any outward signs over the passing of her father and was instead jumping headfirst into the culture and work in Costa Rica. We have discussed this numerous times throughout the years of this podcast. Everyone grieves differently, and I know they make a big deal out of it when there's a disappearance, but just because someone isn't quote-unquote grieving like you think they should doesn't mean they're not grieving. But anyway, I digress. In Nicole's eyes, Leah was avoiding dealing with the pain of losing her father. When Leah returned from her trip, her friends and family noticed a change in her, though it wasn't one which drew a lot of concern. According to her roommate, Nicole, Leah began distancing herself from close friends and started meeting new people. With only one semester left before graduation, Leah chooses to stop going to school and drops out. Her brother Heath did his best to talk her out of the decision. He felt that she was in a difficult space in her life, but that if she could only tough it out for a few more months, she'd be free to do as she pleased, and she would have a degree to fall back on. Leah had her mind made up and did not want any part of the college life anymore. With no job and no degree, she did decide to use the money she had in the bank to live on. She bought a guitar and began taking lessons and also showed some interest in pursuing photography. During this time, Leah also dedicated more time to her writing. Now, writing was something she had always done, but now she felt a much more stronger connection to it. She adopted a kitten whom she named Bee and began spending a great deal of time hanging out at coffee shops. There she met and spent time with new people, all the while writing in her journals and writing poetry. Her new friend stated that she was very open about what she was going through, what she was feeling, and her dreams and plans. During this time, Leah found a new interest in the works of Jack Kerouac. Sorry, new tongue, Got me a new tongue for back to school. Jack was a famous beatnik writer who had authored such books as On the Road and The Dharma Bums, the later being Leah's favorite. She became fascinated with the idea of traveling across the country to take in all the beauty and the sights, subconsciously, possibly finding herself along the way. It seemed apparent to those who knew Leah that she was struggling with the loss of her mother and father and finding her own place in the world. In The Dharma Bums, Kerouac wrote extensively about his time spent on Desolation Peak, which is located in the North Cascade Mountains of Washington State. Janine Quiller had met Leah during one of her coffee shop trips, and the two became quick friends. According to Janine, Leah expressed her passion for Kerouac's work and her desire to take a trip to see the sights of the country, specifically Desolation Peak. Quote, "From the last conversation that we had, we were just talking about the Dharma Bums and about how Kerouac was up on Desolation Peak, just talking in all the beauty around him." End quote. Now, Janine would also state that Leah began discussing the possibility of following in Kerouac's footsteps. Nicole, Leah's roommate, also shared that Leah had come to her about the same topic. She asked Nicole if she'd be interested in taking a trip with her around the country, and though Nicole agreed that it sounded like a great idea, Nicole had a job and responsibilities. She couldn't just up and leave. Leah, on the other hand, had zero responsibilities, and she also had some money in the bank, and this was an opportunity that she may never have again. So in March of 2000, Leah decided it was time to pursue this journey and see where it would take her. On the morning of March 9th, 2000, Leah spoke to her sister Kara on the phone. They discussed live, how things were going, and made plans to see each other. They never set a specific date and time, however. Kara stated that the call ended with them agreeing to meet up soon, and she had no reason to believe anything was wrong with Leah. Kara also stated that Leah never mentioned any trips or plans during this call. Later that afternoon, Leah was talking with her roommate, and according to Nicole, the two made plans to do some babysitting the next day. Again, Leah seemed fine and showed no signs of having any other plans. One thing that everyone is agreeable on is how Leah was extremely dependable, and when she said she was going to do something, she did. So Nicole left for work shortly after this conversation, leaving Leah home alone. When Nicole gets back home, Leah was not there, and her 1993 white Jeep Cherokee was also gone. Nicole didn't think much of it, though, because Leah was coming and going as she pleased because she didn't have any responsibilities. It wasn't unusual for her to be gone, according to Nicole, when she would come home from work. Oftentimes, when Nicole left and arrived home, Leah was either out or she was in her bed asleep. And Nicole had just adjusted to the fact that Leah was doing things on her own time. So it wasn't until the next day, March 10th, that Nicole became concerned. She hadn't seen Leah since the previous afternoon, and Leah was a no-show for the babysitting appointment, which was completely unlike her. Though worried, Nicole didn't think anything in particular was wrong and considered the possibility that Leah was staying with a friend. However, intuition gets the best of Nicole, and she phones Leah's sister, Kara. Now, she tells Kara about the situation, and Kara came right over to their apartment. She immediately went into Leah's room and began looking for any signs or indications of where Leah might be. It was at this time that Kara and Nicole discovered that Leah had taken a lot of her clothing, her new cat, and a lot of her personal items with her. Kara suddenly realized that Leah may have decided to take a spur-of-the-moment trip somewhere, even though it was totally out of character for her. She found it odd that Leah hadn't told her or tried to contact her since she left. Kara and Nicole started calling all of Leah's friends, asking if they had seen her or had any idea where she was. But no one seemed to have a clue. Kara headed to town, stopping at all the coffee shops and spots that Leah frequented, but found no sign of her, nor did she find anyone who knew anything about why she would have just up and left. At first, Kara felt that Leah was simply going on a trip and that she would get in touch with her and let her know that she was all right. Kara was worried, but she didn't feel like there was anything to be alarmed about. More than anything, she was more annoyed that Leah failed to fill her in on her plans. But remember, Leah's a grown woman. She can do whatever she wants. Now, in an interview with CNN, Kara would state, quote, "By the time Leah was 22, she had lost both of her parents, and here she is on the verge of graduating from college, and I think she just felt really lost and didn't have a lot of directions. And I feel like she took this trip as a soul-searching trip," end quote. Several days passed, and on Monday, March 13th, Kara could no longer accept that Leah would not have called by now. So she went to the Durham Police Department and filed a missing persons report. Authorities took the case very seriously, but they were also transparent with Kara, explaining that Leah was an adult and she was free to do and travel as she saw fit. They also had no starting point. Leah literally could have been anywhere, and there was not a whole lot they could immediately do to locate her. They explained to Kara that they would investigate and took down the make and model of Leah's Jeep along with a physical description. They also said they would follow up and visit some of the places that she often frequented. During their initial investigation, they located Janine Quiller, who gave them their first clue. She told them about the discussion of Desolation Peak. Kara returned to Leah's apartment and this time searched her room more thoroughly and discovered a piece of paper folded over with a drawing on it. The drawing was a Cheshire cat, and its grin more specifically. Now, Leah was a big fan of Alice in Wonderland, and Kara felt this was a significant clue because the cat would disappear and reappear. Inside was a note in which Leah discussed traveling and specifically stated, quote, "I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite. Remember Kerouac," end quote. What was curious was that the note wasn't left in an obvious spot, and it was hard to find. In addition to the note, there were several $100s inside left for Nicole to cover expenses while Leah was gone. Now, according to Nicole, there was enough money to cover around a month's worth of rent and utilities. Kara now knew that Leah had left on her own volition, And based on the money, she believed that Leah had indeed planned to return within the month. It was at this point that it occurred to Kara that she still held power of attorney for Leah, since she had it when Leah went to Costa Rica. Now, this gave her access to Leah's bank account records. She hoped that Leah would be using her debit card, which would indicate where she actually was. According to the bank records, on March 9th, just hours after talking to Kara and not too long after talking to Nicole and Nicole leaving from work, Leah had withdrawn $3,000 cash. She had also been using her debit card that night, paying for a hotel room near Memphis, Tennessee. After this, Leah appeared to be using cash for most of her purchases outside of gas, for which she continued using her debit card. Luckily, the card was able to map out her path, and it showed Leah traveling west along Interstate 40. She continued on I-40 until it ended in California. She then turned north, heading along I-5. The last trackable bank account record occurred just after midnight on the morning of March 13th, the day her sister reported her missing. This transaction showed that Leah had purchased gas in Brooks, Oregon. This would be the end of the financial trail. Kara got into contact with Janine Quiller and spoke to her about Desolation Peak. While she was concerned for Leah, she felt some comfort in knowing her probable location. Now, Leah's debit card purchases showed that she had, in fact, made it into the Pacific Northwest, and it seemed most likely that she had or was going to Desolation Peak. Even though there were no signs of activity on her card after the morning of the 13th, Kara knew that Leah had a large quantity of cash and considered it possible that she was simply using that instead of her debit card. Kara tried to remain calm about the situation to give Leah the time she needed to process things and to come to terms with where she was in life and where that life was heading. All of that would change, though, on March 18th, Kara's 26th birthday. She fully expected to hear from Leah, but instead she received some shocking news. Upon arriving home, she found a note stuffed in her mail slot. It was from the Durham County Sheriff's Office requesting that Kara call the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department in Bellingham, Washington. Hoping for news that Leah had been located, Kara was devastated when she was told that Leah's Jeep had been located. It had been abandoned and wrecked. There were also no signs of Leah anywhere. The vehicle had been found off the side of a road 30 miles east of Bellingham. The Whatcom County Sheriff's Department told Kara that early on the morning of March 18th, a husband and wife were jogging along Canyon Creek Road, a side street of the Mount Baker Highway. Now, this road is considered a back road mostly used for logging and is not often traveled by locals, let alone someone who had never been in the area. While jogging, the man and woman saw clothing scattered in and about the forest. The couple, curious, looked closer at the clothing and found a majority of it at a point in which the road curved sharply and trekked on an upward incline. As they approached, they found more clothing lying on the ground, with some even tied to branches of trees. They also found a driver's license and a passport. As they looked down the embankment off the side of the road, they saw the Jeep at the bottom visibly damaged in the fall. They immediately notified the police, who arrived on the scene to investigate. Sergeant Kevin McFadden arrived on the scene and quickly determined that something wasn't right about the accident. The damage to trees and calculations made by crash investigators showed the Jeep was traveling at approximately 30 to 40 miles per hour when it went over the edge of the road. Based on the damage to the vehicle, which included dents all along the body, plus busted out windows, they determined that the vehicle had gone over the embankment and rolled multiple times before stopping right side up. Police thoroughly searched the area looking for any signs of a survivor. They felt it was unlikely that someone could simply have walked away from such a serious crash. The authorities were unable to find any tracks or signs of anyone outside of the items scattered around the area. Strangely, the busted-out windows appeared to have been covered up with blankets and pillows. This led investigators to wonder if someone had spent time in the Jeep following the crash. Sergeant McFadden stated that this wasn't the kind of accident someone was likely to walk away from without having taken some serious bodily damage. He would later state, quote, "With the speed that the vehicle was traveling and the amount of damage to the vehicle, you would anticipate some type of injury to the person inside, at least some type of evidence to indicate contact damage that the person had been inside of the vehicle," end quote. Despite this statement, there was nothing to indicate someone was actually in the vehicle, however, when it went off the road. There was zero damage to the steering wheel. The seat belts were not stretched out. There were no signs of blood and no evidence in the surrounding area that anyone had sought help or was wounded and unable to walk away. Police ran a quick search through local hospitals for anyone who had been admitted in the past few days for injuries similar to what they would have expected related to this accident, but there were no admissions matching this scenario. For the first 5 days, police initially were not sure what they were dealing with. It was obvious there was an accident, but they didn't know if foul play was involved or not. Locals have stated that it was not uncommon for people that knew the area to have a few too many drinks and crash their cars, where they would leave them for a few days, then they'd report it to police. Now, let's make it clear, though. While it wasn't an uncommon occurrence, it wasn't something that happened often. The most perplexing thing was that it happened to this extreme, and this vehicle had North Carolina plates. This immediately drew the curiosity of investigators, and it was when they reached out to North Carolina authorities that they were informed of the missing persons report on Leah. Even though they were in possession of her vehicle, they had no trace of Leah herself. Among the clothing at the wreck site, police also discovered all of Leah's personal effects. This included CDs, her checkbook, cat food, a cat carrier, all located inside the Jeep. Kara knew that Leah had taken the cat with her, but the cat has never been located. Police were baffled. It appeared to be an accident, but investigators felt like there was more to this scene than met the eye. They began to wonder if the accident was staged because it didn't seem possible that someone could have rolled down that embankment, causing such extensive damage to the vehicle, and simply walked away without so much as a scratch. Sergeant McFadden stated, quote, "There's nothing to indicate the wheel was tied and that it was pushed off the road. We couldn't find any marks on the back that indicated anyone had pushed it to where it was located. If you had somebody driving the vehicle and they jumped out, you would have taken your life into your own hands, jumping out of a vehicle at that speed," end quote. Perplexed but determined, investigators gathered up all the items they could locate and sent the Jeep in for processing. While this was taking place, police initiated an inspection of the area using search and rescue teams, search dogs, and helicopters. Unfortunately, nothing of significance was found. During this time, Leah's older brother Heath made the trip to Bellingham along with Kara. Police informed them that they hadn't found anything to indicate Leah's location, but they felt suspicious about the manner in which the Jeep was discovered. Police did take Kara and Heath to the crash site and explain the manner in which the vehicle was found and their belief about how the accident occurred. Kara seemed to agree with the authorities about the likelihood of an injury, but Heath wasn't convinced. He felt that the Jeep didn't look as though it would be impossible to walk away uninjured. After processing the Jeep, police found several items which raised their suspicions. First and foremost, inside one of the pockets of one of Leah's pairs of pants, they discover $2,500 in cash, which would indicate that Leah had spent very little money during the course of her trip. Remember, she took out $3,000 to begin with. They also found Leah's mother's engagement ring, which was found beneath the floor mat on the driver's side. Remember, Leah was said to never take this ring off, and a lot of people have considered this as a frightening sign that something bad had happened to her. Leah's roommate Nicole stated, quote, "As long as I've known Leah, she has worn her mother's engagement ring. It was her most prized possession, and when we discovered that that ring had been found in the car, it was definitely, for me, a bad sign," end quote. This left police with a strange set of circumstances. On the surface, it seemed as though the possibility was growing that Leah may have been the victim of foul play, but it was clear that robbery was not the motive of whoever may have been involved. Most of what they found at the scene did not help in their investigation. They did manage to find one piece of evidence which helped them construct a more precise timeline. Inside of a box located in the Jeep, they found a movie ticket stub. The stub was dated March 13th, 5 days earlier, and was for a 10 p.m. showing of American Beauty at a movie theater in Bellingham's Bellis Fair Mall. This pinpointed for authorities that Leah had arrived in Bellingham 5 days prior to the discovery of her Jeep. It also raised several questions. How had Leah managed to be in Bellingham for 5 days, appeared to have spent little to no money, and not have stayed in a hotel? Investigators began to wonder if something had happened to her shortly after arriving in town and had hopes that locals may be able to assist them. Kara and Heath had missing person flyers printed up with the assistance of the sheriff's department, and together they began plastering them around town, beginning at the Bellis Fair Mall, which was Leah's last confirmed location from the movie ticket. No one at the movie theater remembered seeing Leah, and so Kara decided to go down to the food court. She figured that Leah would likely have eaten at the mall when she arrived. She found only one restaurant in the food court that was a sit-down establishment. Sure enough, several of the workers remembered Leah and said that on the day she had come in to eat, she sat alone. During the course of her meal, men eventually sat on either side of her. So police make a public plea asking for information from anyone who may have been there that day, specifically looking for the two men who may have talked with Leah. One of these men called the police and told them that he had talked with Leah that afternoon. According to him, she had discussed Kerouac and Desolation Peak. He described Leah as a very kind and open girl who he enjoyed speaking with. He didn't have much information to offer beyond that, though. He was able to describe the man sitting on the other side of Leah, whom he alleged had spoken to her for a longer period of time. When police managed to track down the other man, they were given a story which shared similarities to the first man's story. It also had some contradictory details. The first man stated that Leah left the restaurant alone. The second man stated that she left in the company of yet another man. This second man gave such a detailed description of the man she left with that authorities brought him in to work with a sketch artist so that a composite could be developed. According to this second man, Leah referred to this third man as Barry. Unfortunately, no other witnesses were able to corroborate this story, and police began to question whether or not the second man had made all of these details up and invented Barry. They had no evidence to hold him for further questioning, but he was their main person of interest. Several days after the discovery of Leah's Jeep, police received a strange phone call. An unidentified man claimed that his wife had seen Leah. According to the caller, Leah seemed disoriented and confused and was spotted hanging around a gas station in Everett. Now, Everett is a city near Seattle, some 60 miles south of Bellingham. Before police could get more information from the caller, the man seemed to get spooked and hung up. Police could not corroborate his story, but did send investigators to Everett to see if anyone had seen Leah. Unfortunately, there were no additional sightings of her in that area. Investigators do consider this tip credible and consider the possibility that this was the last sighting of Leah. Early on in the investigation, while police were processing Leah's Jeep and possessions, the FBI was called in to assist, but no new leads were gleaned. Kara and Heath stayed in Bellingham for 4 days before returning home. Now, it was a bittersweet trip, but they had lives and families to get back to, and there was nothing else they could do in Bellingham. They felt as the case was in good hands with the authorities, who had been working diligently to find their sister. In an attempt to find this man called Barry, police retrieved surveillance footage from the gas station in Brooks, Oregon. Now, this was the last place Leah stopped for gas. On the footage, Leah can be seen entering the gas station and paying at the counter. Now, she appears to be in good spirits and is wearing a hat. There doesn't appear to be any signs of distress. However, authorities do discover a section of the video that raised some suspicions. While at the front counter paying, Leah is clearly seen turning and looking out the front doors in the direction of her Jeep. She is kind of craning her neck as if watching something or looking for something. Unfortunately, there were no cameras in the parking area, so police could not determine what she was looking at. They have speculated that it was possible that she could have been looking at someone she was traveling with, perhaps someone she met along the way. They began to wonder if this could have been the mystery man named Barry. No new leads were being found, and Leah's case, even though it was active, basically centered around the police monitoring her financial records and Social Security number. Nothing new was coming in, and it slowly developed into a cold case. The Whatcom County Sheriff's Department contacted Kara and asked her what she wanted them to do with Leah's Jeep. Kara felt that it was important to keep it available in case future developments, and considering advances in technology, she didn't want to take the risk of possibly losing evidence. So she requested that they keep it as evidence. So the Jeep was moved to a secured lot where it would sit for nearly 7 years. Very little would develop over the years, and Kara fought hard to keep Leah's name in the public spotlight, enlisting the help of Monica Kaysen. From this, a cross-country trip was organized that followed Leah's trip. The event launched in 2005 and since has become an annual event. It has garnered a lot of attention for not only Leah's case, but for many other unsolved missing person cases. Kara felt that Kaysen was a true friend who helped her and her family through their difficult time of accepting Leah's disappearance. Later in 2006, the lead investigator who had handled Leah's case retired, and his files and cases were passed on to detectives Collins and Smith. Upon their receipt of the case, they chose to look over all of the evidence with a set of fresh eyes. Interestingly enough, they discovered some exciting things. The detectives, Collins and Smith, learned that while Leah's Jeep had been thoroughly processed, there was one area which had never been examined, the engine compartment. This was due in part to damage to the front end. At some point during the evidence processing, the authorities, chose not to pry open the hood. Smith and Collins felt that it could not hurt, so they went to the Jeep, still sitting in the impound lot, and removed the hood. Upon doing so, they found several points of interest. Inside the engine compartment, they were able to recover fingerprints. They also found that the engine had been tampered with, specifically that the cover on the starter had been removed. This would have allowed someone to start the Jeep as well as mess with the accelerator. They began to wonder if it was possible that this was how the accident was staged. With this new information, investigators sent articles of Leah's clothing to the FBI for DNA processing. In the years since her disappearance, there had been some advancements, and they hoped that the Bureau would be able to uncover things which may not have been found back in 2000. They began looking over the files, looking for someone who police may have spoken to that could have had experience as a mechanic, or, at the very least, enough knowledge to know how to mess with a starter. To their surprise, they found that the second man from the restaurant, the one who claimed to have seen Leah leaving with the alleged man named Barry, had worked as a mechanic. Unfortunately, this second man, their person of interest, had since moved to Canada. Smith and Collins contacted Canadian authorities and requested fingerprints and DNA from the man. Now, this process would take over 2 years and ultimately result in no match on the fingerprints. During this time, the FBI managed to recover male DNA from several articles of Leah's clothing. Now, it has never been made public or stated publicly whether or not they matched the DNA from the man in Canada, which has led to a great deal of suspicion on the public's part. Police have come forward and stated that they consider it likely that Leah is deceased, though what led to her death, they are not sure of. In efforts to find answers, they went back to the site of the Jeep's recovery with cadaver dogs and metal detectors. You may be thinking, why metal detectors? Well, remember, Leah had that horrible accident which resulted in her having a metal rod placed in her femur. Despite their efforts, authorities once again came up empty-handed. In the years since her disappearance, Leah's story has received inconsistent media coverage. Unsolved Mysteries did cover her disappearance in 2001, and the show Disappeared covered her story in 2011. Both shows generated phone calls and reported sightings of Leah, though none of them have ever amounted to anything. On Monday, October 23rd, 2018, the Center for Missing Persons, quote, they have a conference or a rally. Basically, it's like a traveling bus, I think, and it's called On the Road to Remember Missing Persons Tour. And they stop throughout the country and kind of drum up publicity for cold cases. So this missing persons tour stopped in Raleigh, North Carolina. This was on October 23rd, 2018. Now, this national tour, like I said, was trying to bring attention to missing persons, and several of Leah's family members were present and discussed her case and hoped that this would help keep her name in the public eye. Since Leah's disappearance, there has been little discovered in terms of evidence. Theories have been developed by family investigators and armchair sleuthers. One theory is that Leah left on her own volition. Well, no shit, because she did. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. We know for certain that the trip was planned and accomplished by Leah, so it wasn't like she was taken hostage or anything. Some have argued that she also orchestrated her disappearance from Canyon Creek Road in Bellingham. According to this theory, Leah wanted to escape her life looking for a deeper meaning or truth somewhere beyond the sphere of her everyday world. Many believe it's possible that Leah chose to leave behind her Jeep as well as her belongings and clothing. Many more argue that Leah may have been inspired by not only Jack Kerouac, but possibly Christopher McCandless, who was the subject of the 1996 John Krakauer book, Into the Wild, and I'm sure I nailed that, which was later turned into a movie by the same name. If indeed he was an inspiration, it may explain Leah's choice to leave behind her money and possessions. When asked about this possibility, Kara stated, quote, "I can understand Leah's needing to get away and find some peace within herself, but considering the loss that our family experienced, it's difficult for me to think that she would leave us open for another loss," end quote. And I think that speaks volumes to this case. I don't think she would have just purposefully disappeared without contacting her brother and her sister. I mean, that family had suffered severe trauma, losing both parents, and then Leah suffering that horrendous accident. So I think Kara's right in that situation. I just don't think Kara would put her brother and sister through yet another loss for that family. Now, the second theory is, despite what her note said, that Leah either had the intent to commit suicide or somewhere along the way of her trip decided that she was going to commit suicide. Many people feel that Leah's goal was to reach Desolation Peak and take her own life, but for some reason, something went wrong. Feeling dejected and still struggling with the loss of her parents, Leah may have wandered into the wilderness of the Pacific Northwest and taken her own life. Now, a tangent off of the suicide theory is that following the crash, Leah may have become disoriented or possibly suffered head trauma. Confused and lost, some believe she may have wandered off into the wilderness and, unable to find her way back, either perished or succumbed to the elements/exposure. She could have also found herself injured in some manner that she could not have recovered from. Others have argued that though evidence doesn't seem to support it, Leah may have suffered from some kind of internal injury which took her life within hours or days of the accident. Speculation suggests she may have wandered off and died as a result of her injuries. Others have put forth the possibility that someone may have been involved in the accident and that when Leah passed away, this person chose to conceal her body in order to hide his or her involvement. I don't know about that one. Again, you never know what someone's going through. You never know if along her trip she ran into something that reminded her of her mom and dad and she just found herself in a dark, dark place. And then kind of a hybrid would be that she's looking for a road. She somehow drives off the side of that mountain road and unintentionally kind of passes away. Again, I don't know. I don't want to put my stamp on either one of those two possibilities. I mean, it's just a theory and it is plausible. Now, the final theory is that while Leah may have chosen to take this trip, something happened to her along the way which ended her life. Many believe it's possible that Leah may have picked up a hitchhiker or met someone who would later abduct and or murder her. Many people point to the account of the restaurant witness and his claim about this man named Barry. Others look at the witness himself as a possible suspect. Police have felt from almost the beginning that Leah was likely the victim of foul play, even though they have never been able to discover evidence which could prove this for certain. The disappearance of Leah Roberts is a baffling case. The idea that a young woman with a bright future, someone who had suffered so much tragedy, could go on a journey of self-discovery from which she never would return from is both chilling and heart-wrenching. Her brother and sister remain hopeful that someday they will find answers, but as years move forward, it becomes less and less likely that it will lead to a happy ending. Now, her sister Kara continues to work hard to keep Leah's name in the spotlight, and 25 years later, her case remains absolutely baffling. What happened to Leah Roberts and why, after all these years, has there never been anything which could break open her bizarre case is crazy to think about. Following in the footsteps of Jack Kerouac, a beautiful young woman vanished into thin air and a family shattered by tragedy was forced to take another brutal hit. Though the pain will always remain, we can only hope that someday they may receive their answers and have closure as to what happened to their baby sister. So if we go back to the theories, the first one examines the possibility that Leah's disappearance was of her own choosing. We know for a fact that her trip was certainly planned and carried out by her. She gathered clothing, personal items, withdrew money from the bank, and she even left a note with enough money to cover the bills for the next month. She had spoken to multiple people about the possibility of taking a trip across the country, and her conversations with Janine Quiller suggest that Desolation Peak in Washington State was certainly her destination. For one reason or another, Leah didn't tell anyone she was going. Now, this could have been due to her being afraid that people in her life wouldn't approve or they might try to talk her out of it. There is the possibility that the decision to go had already been made and the timing of her leaving may have been based on a more spontaneous moment. We will most likely never know why she didn't tell anyone or why she didn't reach out to anyone after leaving. Leah was ready for the trip and was determined to make it happen. So what went wrong when she arrived in Washington? We know based on the ticket stub that in the days before her Jeep appeared wrecked down an embankment, she saw the movie American Beauty. We do not know how long she stayed in Billingham, but investigators found there were 5 days between the purchase of the movie ticket and the discovery of her Jeep. Now, this opens a lot of possibilities of where she could have went or what could have happened to her in that time. So the question is, did Leah accidentally crash her Jeep and choose to abandon it, or did she stage the accident herself or with the help of someone else in order to walk off and disappear from the world? Again, I don't think she puts her sister and brother through yet another tragedy just because she's disillusioned or disenfranchised with the world. But again, it is very plausible. Now, a lot of people have made the connection that Leah may have been inspired by Christopher McCandless, who famously left everything behind and went on a hiking trip across the country. McCandless perished in the wilderness of Alaska after traversing much of the country on foot just 8 years before Leah made her trip. Now, McCandless was 24 at the time of his death and Leah 23 when she vanished. The correlations don't end there either. Much like Leah's case, McCandless deserted his own car after it became disabled, and while it's easy to make the connection, I can see the similarities. I don't believe this was an inspiration. I really don't. I also do not believe that Leah made the decision to vanish and start a new life, like I said. Leah was very open with the people in her life as well as almost everyone she met. Everyone that had any prolonged contact with her says that she talked about Jack Kerouac, but no one ever mentioned her talking about Christopher McCandless. In my opinion, if he was some sort of inspiration for her trip, she would more than likely mention him to someone along the way. Even in the note she left behind, she talks of Kerouac and no one else, minus the drawing reference to the Cheshire Cat. Leah was not a selfish young woman. She was definitely, unfortunately, a person that knew trauma. But again, I find it hard to believe that she would purposely disappear to start a new life, knowing how hard losing her parents were on her sister, and brother. I truly do not believe that she would have made the choice to put those two through more pain and heartache. I also point out again that Leah left enough money for her roommate to cover rent and expenses for a month. If she was planning on disappearing, why would she leave any money? Or why wouldn't she leave more? Like a guilty conscience. I'm not coming back. I'm going to leave you more than a month's rent so that you can find someone else to take my place. I believe this is the one thing that points to the fact that she was most definitely planning on returning to her life in North Carolina. We also have the reference to the Cheshire Cat, who is known to disappear, but he always reappears. If she truly was struggling with the loss of her parents and trying to find her place in the world, it doesn't seem very enlightening or along the lines of self-discovery to leave the rest of her family behind without so much as a word. Leah had cash and her debit card on her, but along the trip, she used the card for the most part. If she was looking to run away and not be found, she would have only used the cash. Thus, no financial trail of where her destination would have been. Leah's family doesn't believe she ran off either. All of the evidence suggests that she was planning on returning up until the final days of her life. It is my belief that Leah was planning to come home, but something happened between March 13th and March 18th that changed those plans forever. Some have suggested that Leah got into the scenic beauty of the Pacific Northwest and was overcome by it and wanted to experience more, making the decision to leave the rest of the world behind. While I've expressed that this is plausible and a possibility, I do not find it very likely. Leah was not a foolish young lady who would have left her clothing along with $2,500 cash and her beloved mother's ring behind to start over. Looking at the second theory, it suggests that Leah may have made the decision to end her own life and have been subjected to an injury in the crash which left her unable to clearly think. Of course, like I said earlier, suicide is not out of the realm of possibility, but I go back to the note with the month's worth of rent, money, and expenses. We also know for a fact that she wrote in that same note that she was not suicidal and actually the exact opposite. Yes, this note could have been left so that her friends and family wouldn't worry about her, giving her time to go and commit suicide before she was located or stopped. There are two camps on the suicide theory. One is that Leah knew that she was taking the trip to take her own life. The other is that she may have made the decision to end her life during this trip. I don't think she was looking to commit suicide from the get-go. Why bring all of that stuff with you as well as your new cat if you were thinking of committing suicide? Also, why leave the roommate money and leave the note? If suicide is a possibility, however, it would have to have been something she decided to do at some point during the trip. She never made it to Desolation Peak as far as we know. And as infatuated with Desolation Peak as she was, if she was going to take her life, I feel like that she would have wanted to do it there. There is the possibility that wrecking, good Lord, I made it this far and I messed it up. There is the possibility that wrecking her Jeep left her feeling dejected and she was now unable to reach Desolation Peak. But playing devil's advocate on that line of thinking, she had money in the bank. She didn't take all of her money out of the bank. She also could have contacted her brother or sister and been like, hey, I screwed up. I wrecked the Jeep. I'm going to get a rental. I'm fine. I just want y'all to know where I'm at. But anyway, wrecking the Jeep could have been the final straw that just nothing was going right in her trip. But again, flip-flopping, she seemed okay in the surveillance video, and the clerk didn't remember her, being overly happy or overly sad. There was no indication by the two men that spoke to her at the movie theater that she was, down in the dumps. She, again, was talking about Kerouac and Desolation Peak. So this is a hard one because there's just, you can talk yourself into many of these theories, but I think something happened to her, just gut feeling on this one. Either she met someone and foul play is involved, or she was in that vehicle, crashed it, was injured internally, knew she was injured internally, tried to stay in the vehicle until she was found, couldn't, got out of the vehicle, and ultimately succumbed to the elements. Which, poking holes in that theory, you would think the cadaver dogs and the metal detectors would have turned up her body. Again, who knows? I mean, this is just a very wild, wild story. So let us know what you think. Again, this is a head scratcher for sure. So recommendation is a Netflix series called Untamed. It's a murder mystery. Starts off with a bang, so buckle up, Buttercup. It's set in Yosemite National Park and stars Eric Bana and Sam Neill, the notable actors in that one. Eric Bana's not done anything big in a long, long time, but this is a very well-written show. It's a limited series, so striking, beautiful landscapes. So each episode's about 40 to 50 minutes. So you can probably knock out the whole series in a weekend or 2 days. There's six episodes, so. But that is the recommendation for this week, Untamed on Netflix. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are not a patron, please head over to patreon.com/mysteriousbrews and check out our What If series on there. I think the next installment's going to be, what if the son of Sam were the sons of Sam? More than one. We also have had someone reach out about a what if. Mr. Chuck Ball has reached out. We got a doozy there, but that's going to take a little bit of research. So looking at getting into that one. If you are a patron and you have a good one, go ahead and shoot us an email. Leave us a message on the What If episodes on Patreon. I know some of you have sent some Facebook Messenger messages about the What Ifs, and so we've got those written down. Again, if you're not a member of our Facebook private message group, you need to join that thing. A lot of shenanigans and chicanery going on over there. But, boys and girls, it's going to be the 1st of August by the time you hear this one. Buckle up, Buttercup, if you live in the South, because as of today, recording the last week of July, buddy of mine living in Savannah said the air temperature was 104 with the heat index of 113. No, thank you. And boys and girls, that's about all I got to say about that. So, deuces.